Hey, what's up everyone, this is Portugal here today with a new video, which is following up to the ant nutrition video I made, where instead of talking about the species or an update on my colonies, I decide to pick a topic and just explain everything about that topic in ant keeping. So last time was ant nutrition. I've also done hibernation, but that was way back, and I'll probably do that again and better, with a little bit better quality, which is what I'm doing now. This video is brand new to my channel, of course, and it's about the temperature and humidity, how you can maintain and have in general the levels of temperature and humidity which will be perfect for your ants to always thrive, no matter the species, right? So let's say you have a species that's like, for example, Mesobarbaris. Mesobarbaris is probably the most commonly kept species in Europe. So you'll be able to find numbers for temperature and humidity very easily. All right, you'll go online and you'll find tons of care sheets which will tell you the percentage of humidity and the degrees of temperature that they can withstand and where they thrive. But if you want to keep something special, or something that you just find in your by yourself, and you have no idea what species it may be, or if you have a species that you've bought or caught or whatever, and it's not from your local area, but you do not really have in the internet any care sheets, and you need to know temperature and humidity. So what do you do then? In any of these three cases, I'd go through a process which eliminates most possible errors. First of all, what you don't want to do is make a bad mistake with this, because temperature and humidity are the basis for your ants to be thriving. All right. Ants depend on temperature and humidity to be right in order to have a steady production and growth of the brood, and in order to not develop diseases due to either too dry of an air or too humid of an air. And then temperature is just related to the growth of the brood, and except when it's very extreme. Humidity influences both at all times, but what you have to know is, first of all, you find the species. If you do not know the species, but it is from your area, all that you need to do is find the averages of the year in your area. You go to Google and you can find that easily in the weather app. That way you can know some values, and there's a thriving threshold there, which you take the highest value and the lowest value, and you just do not use those. Use a little bit safer ones, like 3 degrees below the highest and 3 degrees above the lowest. Also, if you're in a temperate region, they probably hibernate, so the lowest temperature is not the lowest temperature of the year, it's the lowest temperature that is attained. But in months where you're sure the ants are not hibernating, for example, from March 4th or from September backwards, those months, you know they're not hibernating. No ant is hibernating in those months. So you take, for example, the lowest temperature from March and the lowest temperature from August, and whichever is lowest, you use that as your lowest. If that's below 10, forget it, use 10 degrees Celsius. No ant should be kept at below 10 degrees Celsius. Some can, don't do it, it's better if you don't. Now you know that threshold, and if you live in a home in the country where, or in the area, I'd say the area, I'm used to saying country because of how small mine is, but most countries are a lot bigger than mine. So in the area that you live, if you caught the queen yourself in the area that you live, your home probably maintains a steady temperature that is somewhere between the threshold boundaries that you've just now known, so it should be okay when it comes to temperature. You should have no problems. Humidity, you do the same thing. You go check the boundaries, take a little bit off. Now in humidity, I'd say take 5% off shave 5% off on both sides, and there you have your thriving threshold, right? And measuring temperature is easy. So you've got the temperature in the room, therefore that's a temperature in the nest because the nest is in the room. If you have to heat it up for a tropical species or a more heat-loving species, what I recommend you do is you put the heating source on one side. For example, a heating cable, do not spread it around on the whole nest. Put it on like one half of the nest, and therefore that will create a zone that's heated to the temperature you think they'll like, and then you have a little bit that's cooler. That allows for the ants to thermoregulate and move the brood and themselves to where they feel best, and then you can adjust a little bit to give them a big area of the nest that is of the temperature that they prefer, but never the whole nest, because there's always a requirement for a space that's cooler or a space that's hotter. In nature, in the sun, it's a lot hotter. In the shadow, it's a lot cooler. Inside the earth is a lot cooler as well. Or maybe it's a little bit hotter depending on the temperature outside. So in captivity, in a closed setup, if you create temperature, you'll create it everywhere, and there will be no way for the ants to cool off if need be or heat up if need be. So you should give them a way to change temperatures a little bit. That's not to say that you need to give them a big gradient. You give them the 70% of the area of the nest, you put that the perfect temperature for your ants. Everything else you leave to be a little bit cooler if you're heating it up. That way, your colony will be thriving in no time because they're able to choose and thermoregulate, so there's no problem with that. When it comes to humidity, as I've said, you found your threshold. Now, how do you make it fluctuate, and how do you allow for a hydroregulation, which is the same thing as thermoregulation, but for moisture, humidity? To do that, all you have to do is make sure that the space where they are at is at the bottom of the thriving threshold. For example, let's say the last video I've made is on Phytolith pallidula. They can live in humidities as dry as 30, right? But 30% is not the lowest my ants in my ant room can go. The most humidity requiring species I have will require a constant above 50 humidity. So I maintain the whole room at 50. That's enough for every other ant to thrive well. And then in that ant setup, or maybe actually in every ant setup in the nest, I moisten one side of the nest. I never moisten it all, alright? And then what that creates is, for example, if you have a sponge on this side, that will create a gradient that goes more humid, less humid. So they can hydroregulate. And hydroregulating is more important than thermoregulating, because thermoregulating and temperature is just something that influences the ants, and they usually do not really care about it. It's just a fact. Like, it's this temperature, that's fine. We'll deal with it, and because it usually changes, right, throughout the year and throughout the day. Humidity, on the other hand, does not fluctuate as much. Therefore, the ants constantly fight and move brood and themselves to a place where humidity is better. And the brood actually has a different preference in humidity. For example, pupae usually like it drier than larvae of the same species. So the worker ants will move them accordingly, and you must give them the option to actually have broods that's on the drier side and brood that's on the wetter side of the nest. If you don't do that, if you keep a level of humidity that's actually still in the thriving threshold for them, they'll possibly thrive. But the better way is to let the ants be able to choose, because they know what's best for themselves better than you do. There is no way that you can take better care of an ant colony than it can take care of itself. So what you as an ant keeper must give them is the best conditions for them to take care of themselves. So everything that you can remove that would be only detrimental for them, you remove, and everything that would be only good for them, you give them, and you let them choose and give them options, because that way always the right choice will be made. There will be no human error in the mix. As long as you do your homework and do not actually make a big mistake and give them an area where it's very, very hot and they actually just die by being there. So every member of the colony will eventually die by checking out that spot, or something too low, for example, some Asian fire ants like Solenopsis geminata really do not enjoy cold temperatures, and the queen, if she goes a little bit, if she stays a little bit of time on the too cold or on the too hot, she'll either die or stop producing eggs. So if you do not give them the extremes, if you do your homework and you maintain the thriving barriers and never cross them, you should be just fine, because they'll choose for themselves and they'll choose best. And that's how my philosophy in ant keeping works. Let them choose, they know best. They know better than myself for sure, and whether you want to admit it or not, they know better than you. So that's all. I hope you can now thermo and hydroregulate your own ants and let them do it by themselves if you can. So bye bye.